Hi everyone, it's Michelle again. People have asked me, number one is how I went from representational art to abstract art, and we're going to talk about that, but also just my general artistic journey. I think it's really helpful. The reason I'm doing this not is to tell you so much about me, but for you to see sort of what it's like continuing on a path of art over time. I've been doing this for over 40 years. So at this point in my life, I have a longer arc than I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'm just going to give you the overview of how I changed, how I got into art, talking not only about the art, the development of the art itself, but also about the spiritual and psychological journey that goes along with dedicating your art to yourself to art. And this obviously is for any art form, be it, filmmaking, music, whatever your thing is, dance, I don't know. But I'm so excited to get the conversation going in the comments. That's going to be, I think, the real juice in this topic is I want to hear what your journey has been like, what it is like, what have been the challenges, what have been some key turnaround points for you. So let's have fun with this. So it all started when I was born. Okay, we don't have to go that far back, but I honestly believe that many of us are sort of hardwired when we're born to be more creative types and some more scientific thinkers and some, whatever it is. We all are born with particular skills and talents that often start to become apparent at a very early age. And if you're a parent, also share about some of the fun things you noticed as you were raising children, unique characteristics that presented themselves very early. So as far as visual art, every kid likes art time, and so I always enjoyed that stuff. I remember a very specific incident in, I think it was first grade or kindergarten, we were doing this collage and the, teacher and the helpers in the class had cut out all these beautiful pieces of fabric in specific shapes that we were getting to combine to make a person. And I was so into it, and I saw the pieces and I want those pieces, and of course we all had to take turns selecting the pieces, and I remember thinking, I hope I get the pieces I want. It mattered to me so much. It wasn't happenstance. It was I immediately had a strong aesthetic vision for that piece, and I really wanted, and I was really hoping that someone wouldn't take the pieces that I had my eye on. But over time, I always loved to draw, and in elementary school, I kept a sketchbook. I did a lot of pencil sketches. I don't remember having a lot of art materials in the house. I don't remember having paint around, not even a watercolor set or oil pastels or anything like that. I just remember doing a lot of pencil drawing. Didn't even have colored pencils. We did have magic markers because at the time, in the 70s, there was this doodle art craze, and they would, have these kits, in a big cardboard tube. You take it out, there'd be a big poster that was basically just a black and white line drawing, and they have a bunch of markers in there. And so that would be an activity for me and my friends, getting together and talking and coloring in these doodle art posters. I think that's what they were called. Anyway, so there wasn't anything particularly strong, and I did end up taking some kind of summer course, maybe when I was in 6th grade, and I remember having paint for the first time, and I lived in San Diego, and so I think we went on site. I have some funny old painting of a California mission, but there was something that happened. I do remember a sketch of my dad that I did that was, I went from a sort of interpretive view of the world, how kids draw. It's just I'm going to do a circle for the head and a triangle for the nose or whatever. So we have these, I think they call it haptic. And then at one point I remember drawing my dad lying on the carpet watching TV, and it went into the more right brain, which is kind of a more naturalistic. And that shift happened for me automatically. No one taught me that. I mean, there are books, and I think I've mentioned before, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain is a great book for that if you're interested in being able to see and interpret what the natural world and have it be more of a photographic version. I don't privilege one over the other, let's just say that. I am crazy about kids' art. I love artists who have their own unique drawing style that doesn't necessarily have to do with exactly how things look. So we'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, junior high, high school, I didn't have a specific emphasis on art in school, and probably wasn't doing a ton of art because I was, at that age where you're sort of focusing on friend groups and socializing and everything. I don't remember it being a big part of my life. And then high school, it was my senior year where I first got my hands on acrylic paint. And that was fireworks went off, light bulbs went off. It was a pivotal moment for me. I remember feeling so natural with the medium and so in love with it and so excited about it So it was from high school on that I really determined I'm going to make this part of my life. Like, this matters to me. I love it. It was somehow strangely easy for me to paint. I would get completely absorbed in it, and the 50 minutes of class time just went like that. And it was this kind of elevated feeling, this consciousness that I hadn't experienced before. You know, I think people call that the zone or whatever, you know, but just sort of a creative state, flow state. And I loved it. I was so into it. So not only was I enjoying and getting satisfaction about what I was making, and also it was very interesting to me because as I looked around the room when I came out of my like intense focus, I was like, oh, this isn't as easy for everyone else. And I don't know if I'd experienced that much in my life. I mean, I was a good student, so school wasn't too hard for me. A good student, you know, I was a student who could get good grades by doing what they tell you. Is that a good student? I don't know. Anyway, I didn't struggle with school. I loved learning and everything, but this was something different. And so I determined that I was going to make time for art as, you know, I was heading off to college the next year. And I said, I'm always going to make time and take an art class, you know. So I did that. And then I went to college at Tufts University, and they ended up, this is coincidentally, I didn't know anything about this because I wasn't going to school to get a degree in art. I was just going because, you know, that's what I was expected to do, is go to college, get a job, grow up. I had no plan in mind. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I liked teaching, but that wasn't even like on my mind as a career path. I was just, you know, no idea what to do with my life. And I wasn't worried about it. I was just going to go to college. So in college, I ended up taking art classes always. And I got a lot of encouragement from the teachers there. My teachers, they encouraged me to apply for this program where I would get a joint degree. So I'd get a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, and a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, at the same time. So I talked to my parents, and they were okay with it. And so I pursued that. And at the time, all of the work I was doing was pretty much in school. I wasn't really developing much of my own voice yet. I was just so excited and engaged with painting what was in front of me. So I did big figure paintings and was just really interested in really capturing and mixing flesh tones and learning how to draw the human figure. I did a lot of figure drawing, just hours and hours and hours, just so much figure drawing, gesture drawing, contour drawing, shading, all that kind of stuff. I just really dug deep into painting and drawing from life. So it was very satisfying and engaging to me to really try and master drawing from life, mixing naturalistic colors, you know, trying to get the figure to look like a figure and so forth, and even some portraiture. And then over time, as I got in the more advanced painting classes, that became a little less engaging. And I was asked by my teachers to come up with my own series of work, to develop my own voice. And that was a really challenging transition because, as I mentioned, I was, you know, the good student, which in the American system was really just meant following what the teachers told you, follow the leader. It's not about finding your own voice or discovering who you are, developing your own ideas. At the time, that was how we were taught. Hopefully that's changing in school. But it was a lot of memorization and reading the textbook and test questions and answering questions. So there's really no creative thinking taught. And so it was a big deal. Suddenly I had to come up with my own ideas, and that was a little bit of a struggle, but I persevered and started tentatively to just come up with my own ideas, my own vision, and realized that in paint. And I was very, very insecure about what I was doing, felt very vulnerable to share these parts of me. By that point, my father had died. He died when I was 19, so I was going through a process of grieving and also questioning life. What is life? Where do people go when they die? Where was my dad? You know, someone who'd been so pivotal in my life. So I did this one painting that to me represented the process of grieving. And again, it just felt so personal. I didn't feel comfortable. I wasn't sharing my work proudly. I was digging deep and feeling very protective about what I was making. So one of the paintings I did when I was in college was a breakthrough painting for me, and it was a large canvas. I was looking at Anselm Kiefer, and I wanted to add lots more texture. I was painting in oil at that point, and I was adding sand into the oil paint and found objects. I'd collect things around the city, like cool, interesting pieces of rusty metal. I was just finding the beauty in everything. And I
I look at it now, and it was really about the beginning of my searching, my spiritual searching. And that painting really represents that to me a lot. I didn't know what I was doing. Again, this is the beauty of getting to make art, because it's almost like you're dreaming awake. You're pulling from your deep subconscious ideas, symbols, and things. You don't necessarily know where they're coming from, at least in my case. Now, you might want to share with me that you get the image and then you paint it. But for me, it's this process, this beautiful, exciting process of unfolding and discovering. And I saw this little figure, in my mind's eye, and I'd actually done a study for it over the summer, and then I wanted to do it on a big canvas. And and then looking back years later, I was like, oh, that was about my seeking, my spiritual seeking. And I was starting to have a daily meditation practice and read different spiritual texts and just learn a little bit more about my inner life and the greater part of me that goes beyond the personality, physical self. So I did start developing my own voice, and it was definitely a struggle. I didn't feel comfortable, but it was just making baby steps, just trying things out. And if you're in that space, I encourage you to do the same, to really try things out. Not be afraid to make bad work, not be afraid to make, quote unquote mistakes, to try and do things a little outside of your comfort zone and allow yourself the time and the space and the grace to develop your own voice. And that can take years. You don't have to get it right away. You don't have to get it in one painting. Definitely, let's just say I'm going to give you an assignment. If you're trying to find your own voice, I'm going to give you a 30 painting assignment, complete 30 paintings, trying to discover who you are as an artist. And the 30 paintings might be wildly different, each one, but I assure you, by the end of doing 30 paintings from your own ideas, from your own heart, you will be further along that path. And I believe our soul is guiding us. This higher part of ourselves, our deeper self, is guiding that process. And it is a process, so enjoy it, have fun with it. If you're always focused on the finished product or the outcome or other people giving you positive feedback, you might miss some true richness and discovery, because you'll be taking yourself, outside of your inner voice, and you will not develop the inner voice if you're constantly looking to others to tell you, is this good? Is this okay? Is this acceptable? Part of developing as an artist is to develop that resolve, that inner voice, that sense of taste, what you like, and to really truly learn to let go of what other people think of what you're doing. And that is essential to your development. And it's an ongoing process. So I moved out to California from Boston, and I was like, I'm doing this thing. I'm an artist. I'm going to be an artist. I am determined. And I was so determined. I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of that. So I set up a little studio for myself in the basement, shared basement, and with the landlord's permission, I painted the walls white, put up a little light. I had this little tiny space with one window, and it was where the shared laundry was for everybody. And that was such a blessing. I started off with just a table in the hallway in our little one-bedroom apartment, and then I had a bigger space, and so I was able to work larger. I think the biggest painting I did in that space, believe it or not, was 6 feet by 9 feet in that tiny little space. So I really did start to develop my own voice, and I was very influenced in these paintings by religious icons, retablos, and things like that. So I was studying how to do metal leafing. I was working small on wood panels. I switched from canvas to wood, and I was discovering my own voice. This painting, The Weight, was about the presence of death in our daily lives, that it's always there, even though we don't talk about it or acknowledge it, a lot of us. Then I came up with an idea. So when I was 25, I went on a trip to Ireland with my mom, and I went to Newgrange, which blew my mind because I had not been educated on the ancient civilizations. So Newgrange had a function where at a certain point, this is like 35 years ago, so I can't remember what time of the year it was, the sun would shine into this aperture in the building and touch a stone in the middle, and it had all been very carefully calibrated to the patterns and movement of the sun to that particular time of year. It was really astounding. They used there were stones with these carved spirals and some other symbology. And that really influenced me. I came back, and that's when I I think, to do my first abstract work. And it felt very pattern-like, really influenced by pattern. I was very interested in pattern symbols. I was reading Joseph Campbell's books. And I did this big painting, and it was actually a floor cloth, because at the time my mom had sent me an article about these canvas paintings that were popular in colonial America where carpets were not readily available. And so people would do paint designs on canvas and put them on the floor. And I thought, oh, this could be like a little side business. Didn't succeed for me. I didn't make a lot of money at it, but I enjoyed working large. And because they were on canvas and not on stretcher bars, I could roll them up. I didn't have to worry about storing really large pieces. So that was a breakthrough piece for me. And the whole concept of the wall, like in the creative process, and where you get to a point and you think you can't go through. And I went through, and it was changed me ever more. So I was much more comfortable with the creative process. I became very comfortable with the not knowing, or with it looking really bad, and knowing that was just a phase I was going to get through. So then there was this period of being really influenced by some of the women surrealist painters like Remedios Varo, Leonora Carrington, Dorothea Tanning. I was fascinated by their work and definitely highly influenced. I wouldn't call myself a surrealist by any means, but there's something about this deep power of the unconscious and the mysterious, and how to represent that. Like this painting, Eye Huts in the Forest. I felt so compelled by this image, and I still could not tell you what it's about, but I know I will someday. And if you want to tell me what you think it's about, I'd love to know. It was a long period of these symbolic, figurative works. I was really enjoying this, and I didn't always need to know what the symbols meant. They had such deep resonance that I didn't need a specific interpretation, and I kind of like to leave that open too for viewers. I love asking people what they see in the paintings, what they think about them, because I think we all can come and bring something of ourselves to it, and that doesn't mean that's what the artist intended or what it's about. So here's another example from that time. This is called The Red Dress, and I'm using metal leaf, some silver leaf in there, and glazing, so a lot of those kind of old oil painting techniques. By this time, though, I had had some health problems, and I had to abandon oil painting after 15 years, and I started working more in acrylics because I could get away from the mediums and solvents. But I used a lot of mediums and glazes, and I was using alkyd mediums towards the end because they dried faster, and that just wasn't good for my health. So I'm super happy with acrylics. As you know me as an acrylics expert, I learned how to do everything I want with acrylics, no compromises. In fact, a lot more. If we go back to that searching painting, I could have added so much more material in. Oil paint would not hold the sand, would not hold the metal. It was really hard, and that would have been like great to do with acrylic painting. And I didn't know it at the time, because acrylic acts like an excellent glue. It would have held onto those pieces of metal. It would have held a lot of sand. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, these symbolic paintings became really, symbolic, iconic imagery became really important to me. And I continued that up until I went to grad school in 2002. And then there was a shift there. So I was starting to develop my own system, my own symbology. And here's something really interesting. I'm going to show you this piece, because if you're at all familiar with my work, you will recognize these arcs, this arc form. I thought I came up with that in 2002, but this drawing was done in 1996. I completely forgot about it and found it years later, and I thought, wow, that was in me. That's something so primal about this symbol. That was in me all that time, and then it just needed to come out again later. So that's what I'm saying, this journey of discovery. And there is also a communication with others. I think that art speaks universally. It transcends the barriers of language and speaks directly to the heart. And I think that's why people are so compelled to interact with it, not just as makers, but people can have some really profound experiences looking at art. So I was doing a lot of drawing on the side, and then I started, with the encouragement of my teachers and classmates, started making installations with them. So combining paintings and drawings in these little groupings. And I really loved what was happening there. And it was very exciting. And also, I had always been drawing on the side, but kind of kept that as my own private expression. I didn't, I never shared them. I never exhibited them. I didn't show them to people. And so this was sort of this flowering of this. And I got very into still working figuratively, but combining it with these abstract elements. They were sort of coming in together. And at that point in grad school, I developed this repetitive mark making practice. And mostly because I was trying to bring my meditation into the art, simply because of the stress of being in grad school. It was a lot to be working and in school full time. And I was just really stretched thin. And I'd get into the studio, I'd have a little segment between classes or work and class. And I just couldn't get in that state, that relaxed state that I needed to be in to make art. And I just thought, I'm just gonna paint some marks, just like a mantra, just repeating something over and over and over and just count them and stay in the present moment. And I loved what happened. And so I did a bunch of paintings like that. And eventually I started switching up the mark. I started doing them on walls. That's when I came out with that art form that I still use to this day. So that's over 20 years later. It was a very fruitful time for me. I'm glad I went to grad school. It was stressful and hard, but it was also a big time of transformation. I was grateful to have the privilege and the ability to do that. And if you're considering it, I would say look into it. If it's something, you can do it at any age. You don't have to be in your 20s. The class before me, there had been a guy in his 80s or something going through the graduate program. So yeah, it was a wonderful time. And I started at that point too. I was really interested in creating these meditative environments for people through the art, through the imagery. But then I decided I could actually make a whole installation. And that's what my thesis exhibition was. It was called A Certain Tiny Ecstasy. And it was also the same title of my written thesis, which I don't have available because it was hand bound and done with a letterpress cover and stuff like that. But you can get my book, 7 Essential Practices. There's always a link below these videos. So if you want to read any of my writings on creative process, 7 Essential Practices for the professional artist. You don't have to be a professional artist to get something out of it. Anyway, so that was very exciting. And then right out of grad school, I started getting opportunities to exhibit and create more installation work. And now I've done a bunch of those over the years, and you can look on my website. I'll show some here. There's the seed piece that I did in Pacific Grove. There's Breathing Room that I did in San Jose. There was the natural falling down of things that I did in Portland, where I developed a technique of cutting out shapes in Mylar and attaching them to glass at the request of the curator, who had wanted me to do a wall painting, and at the last minute said, can you do something on glass? And I'm like, why not? I'll try it. And that was very exciting. And I'm kind of actually eager to try that technique again now. I did Harmony in My Head at a gallery in San Francisco, which was a bunch of meditating heads floating in lines. So a lot of these were really about creating a feeling for people when they see the work. And I get that feedback now that people do tell me they get a sense of peace and equilibrium looking at my work. And I feel like that is very gratifying and makes me feel good about what I'm doing. 10 Hands was a collaborative piece I did. I've done other collaborative things. The Seeds of Hope was people coming together and expressing their wishes or hopes or dreams for themselves or others or for the planet. And then I would speak those aloud as I pinned them on the wall. So my art expanded beyond just making individual two-dimensional pieces to creating these environments or experiences for people. And I'm still interested and engaged in that. And I'm still also like doing two-dimensional work. Currently I'm doing collage. So there's been an evolution over time, and I am excited to see where it will go next. So please share with me anything about your artistic journey, or maybe you want to do your own video and tag me so that I can see it. Don't be shy, guys. This is a useful exercise to sort of think through what you've done and what's important to you and how you've grown, and share it with others. So I'm wishing you the best and good creative times, creative flow, and holding a vision that we can all support each other in creating a better world.